Welcome back to Smartwatch Ticks. You are watching the third installment on how we actually design these clock skins, which result in the watch faces for these smartwatches, leading out by the number 1 D5 watch right here. In the previous example, we covered arrays, which are techniques whereby you can place information on your watch face beyond just the simple hands and the background. We looked at this particular watch face and we walked through how we had groupings of pictures defining the numbers and symbolically the weather, and then the actual code for arrays that resulted in, when we looked at the edited version of the clock skin XML, results in the placement of this information on the watch face. So I got to thinking while I was watching the review of the new Samsung flagship 7 version of their phones, how they're talking about they're nice, but they're just an improvement on last year's revolutionary models that came out, the Galaxy 6 line, right? And we've seen the same with Apple, where they have a real trailblazing thing and then they refine it the next year. So this class, instead of leaping ahead into glorious new material, although I am going to show you a couple of new concepts, is going to be one of those refinements on what we've already learned related to arrays. This is so important that it's worthy of taking the time to study it a little bit deeper to get some of the flair and feel for what you can do with these arrays. First off, let's take this watch face that we've basically been using already and switch it. We're going to use the same basic face, but we're going to use the date in letters and the day of the week in letters, and then the rest of the stuff in numbers. Now this will be pretty quick because you already have got this concept down. Here's my pen. First of all, you notice we've got the clock skin 1 through 9 numbers with hour, well, the hour, minute, and second, and all those things are the other ones. We've got this grouping like we had before. Then we've got the clock skin month grouping all the way down to here. Notice it's sorted alphabetically just because the computer's sorting it that way. And then we've got the weekday array, right, or grouping right here. Okay. Now we've got the hour, the minute, the second. We have a percent, clock skin percent. Notice it's not associated with numbers or these words. It's just floating by itself. It's not a clock skin _1 _ num _percent. It's just percent. But it is a PNG, and it's assumed that it's of the same font as this is, or it's going to look strange when the percent shows up here on the clock. Nonetheless, this is how it's been put in this one. So we have a percent that ties in with the numbers, and we have another clock skin none PNG, which is just a blank picture. We'll see if that's used somehow in here. And then we've got, of course, our panel, which is the background image, and somewhere in here we should have the model, right? Clock skin model. Am I missing it? Model, okay, of course, it's the one that's showing in the whole picture up there. Those we've all learned about. These are our groupings that associate with the arrays. We have the month, a num array, and a weekday. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. It's just called a num array, a number array, because we have numbers in a couple of places, here and here. They're used in both those locations, but they're the same number, same font, face, and style, so it's just showing up as a num array. We'll take a look at that next. Let's go into the arrays. And very simple, everything we've seen before, drawable image, clock skin month, January through December. These PNGs are little picture files that just have the 3-letter designation in this size font for that particular day of the week. We have the weekday array, again with images for Sunday through Saturday. Again, these are picture files. Each of those have the information for the day of the week. Each of the months has the information for the months. We've got what we need in these arrays, and the number array has got definition for all of the numbers 0 through 9, plus none, and plus percent. Those are all the arrays. And of course, we know that the arrays are used for the definition in the master clockskin.xml file. That's what controls everything. And here it is. Like we've seen before, clockskin to /clockskin, drawable to /drawable, starts out with the name of the background image, the same image that we used before, by the way. Then you've got a number array that is located to the left 25 points and up 80 of an array type 4. Remember, the array type defines what it's going to be. It's going to be the day of the month. That's what the 4 is. And it doesn't have to say that it's a specific month kind of thing. It just has to have the name of the array that matches with the array that's actually being used to call the numbers. So you see how they're making it a little bit streamlined. If you're going to be using numbers in multiple places, just call it one simple num array and call it here with this location. And the controlling factor is the number that's in the array type. So that sets this first part here. Then we go into the month array, its position, its type is 3. 3 will generate the month. It will call a number for that month, but the number is translated in the array to, what is it, Saturday, right? Saturday, it'll do all the way down to the last one. And this particular PNG says SAT. So even though it's a number call from this array type, within the array, it finds the image which is actually translated from within the file that's in the watch face folder to the specific day of the week. Okay? Same thing happens for weekday array. It's centered on the x-axis and is no change in the y-axis, right? It's just off to the right. So there's no definition for a y-axis. Its array type is 5. So you're starting to see that the thing you really need to know are these array types, because everything else follows a similar theme, a pattern. And now here again is that num array like we had up here. Here the num array in an array type 4 created the day of the month. Here the num type in this same array is going to call a number centered at -10 on the x-axis and 100 down on the y-axis for an array type 14, which means battery power. Different numbers are showing up because the array types are different. All that is controlling this background stuff that's set by arrays. We have the background definition itself up here with the name, and the only thing left is to lay out the hands. And there they are. We've got, right here we've got the little charging icon. Remember, when you put it in your charger, you want to be able to see the battery charge thing. That's what this one is. And now we do the hour, minute, and second, rotating at 1, 2, and 3. Clock skin closes the whole thing, and you've got an operating watch skin that looks just like this, using 3 different array sets of information that show up in 4 different places. A num array, a month array, a weekday array, and the num array again for the battery. But this is what I love about this stuff. I made a mistake last time. I'm laying a foundation for you that you always got to watch the next one to learn what I messed up in the previous one. In the earlier one, I was pretty well right, but I wasn't 100% right, because we were talking about, the one before it is the simple layout that just had a background and had hands. And at that point, I told you that in the definition, as long as you put the name up at the top, it didn't matter the order of the rest of these things. They could just be in here any which way, whatever order. Well, that's true if it's only hour, minute, and second hand, as long as you have the name first, because they're all centered around one point and they all float on top of that background. But the next thing you got to know is that the layout scheme of building up these drawables is in layers. So on top of the arrays for planting this information on here, they are building up like you'd make a Big Mac, right? You got to have the bun at the bottom, then the first piece of meat, then the little bun, and then the next piece of meat. And then you got to throw on the lettuce and the tomato and onions. Oh, you're going to hold the onions? Okay, we'll take them onions. Anyway, by the time you've built up the Big Mac, you got a sandwich, but they have to be done in the proper order. So you see what we've done here. We've got the name, and then we've got all these arrays that are putting that background stuff on here. And the last thing we're doing is putting in the hands. So the hands, unfortunately, you don't see in this picture, but if the hand were this way, it would be on top of the word February. Otherwise, the word February would be on top of this. How do I know that? I didn't learn it from the XML guys. That's why I made the mistake last time. I learned it. Well, I'm going to show you this in a minute. That's the next concept we want to go to. Let me switch back to here. There. You remember I showed you this watch face? It's up bright right now, but I've got strong backlighting. Let's see if I can bring a box over and dim it. How do you like my high-tech studio here? Yeah? Okay. See the hands? Notice that the hands are floating behind the digits here and behind the battery power here. The code definition for that, do I have that? No, I didn't print that one, but let me just, I think you can figure it out. The code definition for that went with the name first, and then it laid down the date, all that stuff, and then I had the hands. So the hands definition for the watch was in the middle, and then after that I put the digital information for the date, time, and the battery power. And so as you build it up, you can see that the hands are actually floating over the words here, but underneath the date and time and battery power. So depending on how you want this thing to look, you have to figure out in your mind what layer you want on top of what layer. You see how you can, the minute hand is going behind the 7 and the 87. So what I did is I switched that. And all I did now was pull the hand definition out and put it at the end. In the drawable / drawable, I moved it down to the bottom, and now the hands are floating on top of everything. So if the most important thing for you is to have the hands on top, then make sure it's the end of your XML file, your clockskin.xml, and it'll be that way. Okay, let's take another quick look at a different one that I did. This is the one I played with. I think you remember seeing this. It should be in here still. This is brought together by different pieces. Is it this one? No, you see that's a little bit different down here. This is one where I started like this. I moved the time up here so you could see that layout of the faces, but I had some other stuff which I replaced with the bigger issue of the battery power. But instead of that, let's try this one. Nope, that's that one. Another different rendition of it. And that's the first one. Well, not here. Okay. We'll work with this one because it's going to be pretty much the similar idea, except I've got the time and the information reversed. What I want to show you, the point that I'm going to make, is that instead of in these other clock skins where the number field that we used was the same font face and size, we're working with different fonts now. So how do you handle that in an array? It's pretty simple. For this layout or for that one, you have your groupings, and the groupings are with different clock skins. So you bring in a whole set of clock skins and give them a specific preface number, like 1, the grouping of 2, the grouping of 3, okay? Because we have 3 different ones here. And then all the other stuff is the same. You've got a battery array that's going to define the battery. You have weekdays here because we're using text fields for the weekdays up here. And we've got these 3 different fields for numbers. And all the other stuff is the same. So what does that look like in the rest of the code? The hour-minute array is going to be in font face size 2. So the array definition is going to use 2. That's for the hour-minute array. The battery array, for showing the battery power, which is that tiny one right up there, is in face 3. Okay? Then the weekday array is going to be textual based, so it's calling the PNGs with the actual names. And in this case, I have to show you on the watch here. In this case, they're actually spelled out, right? Thursday in full, instead of just the 3-letter definition. It all depends on what's in the PNG file, folks, as to what it's actually going to show up as. But in the array, you're just doing 7 days of the week in numerical order, starting with Sunday, because the clock is only going to make a call with a number for 3, and you better know that that's Tuesday. And it will, that the array will refer you to Tuesday, and in that, it's actually spelled out. And then the last one is the array for the month-day array, and that's in clock skin face 1. All right, so that's where all the different files come in, groupings 1, 2, and 3. And then in the actual code itself, you don't see any of this stuff in the code. You're only seeing it in the array. You're seeing in the code that it's simply calling it with these different array types, right? The 99 is that always their battery thing. The month-day array, governed by array type 2, is called by the month-day array, and the month-day array is using font 1 from the grouping of PNG number files to give you the numbers. All right. The arrays are pretty easy when you grasp it. It's just when you're working with multiple size and different changes in your fonts. And so when you're bringing in from a different watch, a completely different font face and size, like this one is compared with the original that I started with. Notice the picture's wrong. My picture file has not been updated to match what's on the watch, so that's causing a bit of a consternation there, but I will update it eventually. This was the original font size and face. You can see it's completely different than the one we were just using. And so in order to get that other font in the watch, I had to bring over that entire set of PNG files, the definition, and drop them into the folder so that that font face would be in here as a group of numbers to be called in the array, and then make sure that I change the array format to call that particular grouping instead of this other one, which could just as well still be in the folder, just not being used, or it could be drug out and thrown away to save space, whichever. All right, one more topic to cover today, and then basically we have got everything done that we want to cover in the basic beginning steps, I'd say, of designing a really cool face. Here's an interesting one that one of the viewers just put up a couple of days ago, and we got back and forth with what you could do with this. It's an aeronautical kind of layout where the plane actually represents the minute hand, and the second hand is twirling around over here, and this arrow represents the hour hand. So it's a little past 12. It's about 12:32. You can see behind here, 12:32 is showing through. That's the digital time, but it's covered by the plane. There, it just clicked. Did you see it move? Okay. We're going to talk about rotate. Okay, let's jump to this page. You remember this from last time, and even from the first time. When we're talking about the hour, minute, and second, we're talking about a rotate factor that allows you to rotate the hands according to the speed of 1 every 12 hours, 2 is once every hour, and 3 is once every minute to display these hands. Well, you can rotate other things too. For example, in this watch, a little mod I made just for fun was to set the background, the name up here, by putting a little rotate command after it to rotate it at the factor of 2. So it rotates like a minute hand. And, oh, did I do that? I did the hour hand, I think. So it rotates like an hour hand. That's really, really slow. So it looks like this. Now, I don't know if you notice or not, but now it's shifted so that the white line down here is exactly in line with the yellow one. And the background itself is rotating together with the hour hand, while the minute hand is the plane going around and the second hand remains like this. However, check this out. One tiny modification by changing the rotate speed from 1 to 3 changes everything. Now you have the background rotating as well at the speed of, watch for it, not exactly once a minute, because we're using something called multi-rotate, I believe. Now we're past where I know. I've got to learn this stuff so I can teach it to you, but it's coming up. But when you put that rotate in there, you can actually get the background to rotate as well. And that is the fundamental part of just rotating your background by putting the rotate command here. That's the foundation by which all these other ones that you saw that I was doing earlier come about. Oh, you got to see these too. They're really cool. I'll show you one of them. Here's a rotate on a fan with regular watch hands and rotating the background. This is all brand new this week. Here it is in digital. I tell you, there are some amazing designs coming out, and they all are based on this basic code that you have already learned now in parts 1, 2, and 3. You don't need anything more sophisticated than this to do these kinds of effects. Now, this doesn't have a rotating background, but all these are static until you get to this. This is a pattern with a moire relief rotating. And the interesting thing here, and I'll leave you with this, is there's two images. There's the background image itself, black and white, I presume, maybe color and white. And then there's a top image right above that that's transparent that is rotating. And the two of them are together before you build up and put the hands on the clock. And because of the moire interference pattern that happens between them rotating, you get this. So the bottom one is flat, not rotating. The second layer, which is transparent and opaque, is rotating. And then the hands float on top of it. So there's some extra credit for you. See if you could figure that one out. You'd probably only need a drawable/drawable name of the background. Then right after that, the same thing, drawable/drawable name, but a different name of a PNG file that's the one that's transparent and opaque, and a rotate command that goes along with that to cause it to rotate. Then you pop in your hands, rotating 1, 2, and 3, and the last thing is you put in that 99 array here for your charging icon. Make sure it's clock skin to clock skin, right? And save it into your XML file, your clock skin XML, and all the other stuff goes along with it. It's got to all be in the same folder, and that folder's got to be dropped into your watch, and blah, blah, blah. All right, that is it, except one more thing. Where did it go? This one. I wanted you to at least be exposed to this at this point. I showed you that one watch face last week. That was really fun. Whoa, they're going backwards. What? The data center, remember that one? That has the drop shadow along with the hands. You can see it a little bit on the minute hand here, not so much on the hour hand, but as the second hand comes around, you'll see the drop shadow starting to appear. There it is. For those adventurous folks out there, this is what Loki Fish Mars has given us as how this works. These are the rotate commands for that drop shadow stuff. We know 1, 2, and 3 are your regular hands, but if you have a definition of hands that look like a shadow, you have to have another whole set of .png files that have this drop shadow appearance. It's kind of a grayed out version of the main one, so it will literally look like a shadow. If you have those in there, and he does, called hour background, minute background, and second background, you can do the stackable process of putting the background first with a rotate code of 8 for hour hand, followed by the actual hour hand, 9 for minute, and 10 for second. And you'll have yourself a sophisticated watch face that looks literally like the hands are floating because you're getting the shadow like you would get if they were really raised up against the actual background. Thank you guys for watching this whole mini series on the beginning process of designing watch faces for your number one D5 watch. As I learn more about how you can add much more sophisticated information to these faces, like these little gauges here, where instead of showing numbers, you're showing a little gauge that shows you your power, or a wheel on the watch that turns and shows you the days of the week, or the grandiose kind that have the sun and the moon floating through them, depending on its day or night, all those kinds of things. Those techniques, I call them advanced because they're beyond me. But we'll be looking into that. If I understand them well enough to do a little mini course with you, I will go to the next level and we will dissect how you make these little circle thingies work. I got a feeling it's still using the array concept in a different way. And of course, your background has to have the cutouts in the actual background image for it to be visible properly, and you have to locate it X and Y so the point that it starts from is correct. But if you've got that all done, see, this one's the days of the week and it is now pointing to Thursday. You can create really sophisticated watch faces using these advanced techniques. We're going to get back to doing a few more app reviews. Those of you that aren't interested in clock faces, thanks for bearing with me in this, but we will be back with some interesting apps that you want to add to your number one D5 watch. And stay tuned. We are going to keep delving into techniques for designing clock skins for your smartwatch.